Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of American Grit with myself, Tim Jensen. We're continuing this conversation on psychedelics and, the human mind, mental health. How do we, repair trauma? How do we expand our minds? How do we get ourselves into a position of better mental health? And how do we do that without pharmaceuticals? How do we do that without these other tropes that are out there that are reducing our ability to be focused, reducing our ability to be healthy, and putting us into this downward spiral that keeps us in a state of constant depression and constant struggle and stress? We live in a difficult world, and we are constantly being bombarded by all these different stressors and traumas and things that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And what we are trying to do here at American Grit is provide outlets, provide information, provide understanding and education on things that are readily accessible to you and things that are not, and why they are not, and how we can make a difference in getting them more accessible to other people. And today we're bringing a very special friend to the show, an individual that has been on his own spiritual path and is providing solutions and opportunities to veterans and first responders that are struggling and are looking for an outlet, looking for another way to address their mental health in a more holistic manner. And I want to introduce you to Justin Lapree. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Now, that's a big show opener, right? There's a lot there, a lot of mouthful of things, that we are going to, weave our way in and out of over the next, course of an hour in this discussion. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to this point in time in your own path, in your own journeys.
So I grew up in Katy, Texas. I grew up in an abusive household. I didn't have a really close relationship with my father. He was abusive. He was an alcoholic. I was molested at the age of 5 by a babysitter, something that I suppressed my entire life, that I didn't even remember the memory until this past year, working with some of these medicines that we're speaking about today. And that kind of built a wall for me growing up. I didn't trust many people. I didn't feel close to many people. I didn't know who I was, what my purpose was. So I kind of just floated through adolescence. And then when I got out of high school, I went to an all-boy high school in Houston. And when I got out of high school, I joined the military. And I went into the recruiter's office. I was like, how quickly can I go? It was the Marine Corps. Yeah. And I've seen Full Metal Jacket way too many times. Sure. I was ready. They're like 2 weeks. I'm like, done. And I enlisted. And that was March of 2001. And then I got out of infantry school on September 7th of 2001. And then the towers fell. It was go time as a 19-year-old kid training for war, and having an idea of what that's going to be like, as all the movies. So invaded Iraq in 2003, Battle of Fallujah in 2004, came home with the veteran narrative plus the traumatic brain injury and went into the VA system. Lost my identity, lost my purpose, lost my drive. I was a fucking mess. Yeah. I got hooked on oxys. That's what they were giving me for pain. When the pain stopped, I used them to suppress and to escape. And I was on 13 different pharmaceuticals over my time being treated at the VA. And all of these, what they were telling me were medicines to make me better, were suppressing my feelings. Yeah. So I was in this gray space, I called it, for years, and I was just floating through my current reality. And when I got out, I kicked the oxy habit, moved up to New York City, and I couldn't find work. This was in 2006, and ended up homeless. I was on the streets of Manhattan for about 6 months, and then I found my way to a halfway house for veterans that were struggling with alcohol or drugs, and that's where I stayed for the next 6 months. My best friend at the time, his uncle owned this house, and gave me a bed. And that was a place for me to find refuge, a safe haven for me while I could figure out what my next steps were. My ego was damaged, but yet it was still too big to ask for help. I didn't want to, call my folks who were divorced at the time and tell them that I can't get above water up here. So I started to reach out and socialize with the Wounded Warrior Project. This was pretty much in the beginning of their time, and they were based there. So it was a great way for me to meet other veterans that were in similar situations as I was in. And it was cool. They took us to some cool events and cool games, but I was still struggling.
Right. It didn't change the outcomes.
It didn't change the outcomes. And, luckily for me, a gift from God introduced me to a man by the name of Bob Cheeseman. Bob Cheeseman met me, heard my story, and wanted to interview me at his investment firm, Citigroup. And it was on Wall Street. I was like, man, I've seen that movie. Sounds great.
Yeah. Boiler Room.
Let's do that. Boy, great, another great movie. Put that in the show notes. So I didn't have a suit. I didn't have a pot to piss in. Wounded Warrior Project took me to Joseph A. Bank. 3 suits for like $100. Yeah. Some great deal. And I nailed the interview, and I worked for Bob for the next few years. And then I moved on to a broker-dealer, Brownstone Investment Group. And that's where I would round out my Wall Street career. Now, during this time, I was self-medicating, entertaining customers, over drinking, suppressing, and really kind of going through this, what I called my gray space, what I mentioned earlier. And I didn't have purpose. My bank account looked a lot better than it did before. I wasn't homeless. I was able to afford the lifestyle that I thought I needed, but it came at a cost, and I didn't know who I was anymore. And so I left finance in 2013, and I moved back to Texas. And my mission was to become a firefighter with the city of Austin. And so it took me a couple years to get on, but at the age of 35, I got accepted into their next program. And in 2017, I graduated the Fire Academy with the city of Austin. And that would start what I felt was my calling. I was back in the team environment, which, as you know, we thrive in. Right. It was the boys' club, right? It felt very familiar. There's a lot of veterans that cross-pollinate over into the service industries. And it was badass. Yeah. We get to drive the big red truck down the street, go really fast, loud sirens, and we show up on people's worst days. Right. And we get to help them out of those situations.
It's almost like being a Navy SEAL. We get calendars, like you're loved by all the population.
We just don't write books, right? We just don't write books, and there's not a lot of movies made about us. But yes,
Backdraft.
Backdraft. That was badass. Great. I thought that being a firefighter was going to check all of my boxes to refill my cup, and that I was extremely programmed to be able to act at a high level doing this job, and it would have zero effect on me. Yeah, I was wrong in every sense of the word. I worked at 2 of the busiest stations. I worked at the old Mueller Airport station, Station 14, which is a spec ops station. And then I worked at Station 1, which is off of 5th and Trinity, right next to 36th Street. And the call types of what you're exposed to down there they're horrendous. Yeah. From fatality car wrecks to vehicle rescues to overdoses to suicides to homicides. And then you have your occasional fire. Most of our calls are not fires. And so during this time that I was there, we had a serial bomber in Austin that was delivering explosive devices in FedEx packages that would explode upon opening.
Yeah, that was like 2 summers ago, wasn't it?
No, it was a little longer than that, but it was horrific.
Yeah.
And then we had multiple mass shootings on 6th Street.
Yeah.
I remember standing around looking at all the cops and their vests and weapons. I'm like, dude, we are like sitting ducks out here. We look just like them.
Yeah.
I mean, we wear blue in the Austin Fire Department if we're not in our turnouts.
Right.
Like, this doesn't feel great at all.
Right.
And it was very triggering for me. I had never, up to this point, I had never addressed the traumas of my childhood, my abandonment issues with my father, and then you layer the military service on top of that, and then I was a master at suppression.
Yeah.
Right? And these types of calls over and over and over the course of 5 years had a deep impact on me, and to where I spiraled.
Yeah. I mean, the cup runneth over at some point, right?
That is right.
And it's I think everybody can understand how that will spiral out of control in anybody's circumstance, and the results are never pretty.
I didn't have a foundation,
Yeah.
and I definitely didn't feel safe to talk about it. You're in this machismo type of culture,
Yeah.
to where nobody has feelings, and you make fun of people when they express their feelings, and when they cry, people are looked at as weak.
Yeah.
And it's very similar as in the military, right? And so in 2018, this is when the cup had spilled over, right? And 2018 was a year to where my marriage was disintegrating. My wife at the time was an alcoholic. We had 2 young children. We had just bought a house. We had all these, life stressors. I had a new career, and it just imploded.
Yeah.
And our divorce started in September of 2018. Not blaming her. I'm blaming the legal system and the family law system. But they used my diagnosis from the VA and weaponized it, and I lost my kids for a short amount of time.
Sure. Yeah.
And when I lost my kids, it sent me into a tailspin, because they were the only thing that I was living for. Because if I didn't have my kids, I'm ready to punch out.
Yeah.
Up to this point, it was 13 friends of mine had committed suicide. Now I've had 15 friends since 2005 take their own life. Not all military, mostly military, some firefighters and civilian friends, but they've all lost the battle here at home.
Yeah.
And when I lost my kids, I was ready to stop hurting. I didn't want to feel pain anymore. So I wrote out a letter to each of them independently so that they would open it on their 18th birthday. And it was my final letter to them. And I really wanted to tell them that none of this was their fault, that I loved them more than they could ever understand, but I didn't know how to live with them. And I didn't know how to transcend these emotions and these feelings that were keeping me a prisoner in this life.
Yeah.
And my friends that had left before me, I understood why. I understood why they left, because they wanted peace through death. And so on Veterans Day of 2018, I was on duty, walked out to my truck, same truck I drove here with, and I still had my weapon that I carried over in the Middle East, and it was under my steering wheel. I put it on my lap. It was raining outside. I was just really contemplating and really just sinking into the present moment. And I had the 2 letters next to me. I was in my dress uniform. And I put the gun in my mouth and I pulled the trigger, and the hammer dropped, and that was it. And I blinked open my eyes and I vomited. I was so angry, so anxious, and pissed off that I was still here. Just to get me to this point took so much of it was such a mental battle for me, to where when I unsuccessfully killed myself, I was pretty distraught.
Yeah.
I dropped the magazine, it was empty. Racked back the chamber, it was empty. Now I've never not had a round in the chamber ever.
Yeah.
And somebody on my fire crew had seen me spiraling over the last few months and unloaded the weapon at some point when we were on duty, got my keys, got access to my truck, and unloaded it. And it was unloaded at the time that I went to kill myself. And to this day, I don't know who that person is.
Yeah.
Now, the gift of a second chance has been the greatest gift that somebody's given me. Because what has happened since that moment, I was willing to throw all of that away, not knowing that I could get on the other side. And so I took a couple weeks off, and I read a book, How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. Fascinating read. For the listeners out there that do not know this book, or maybe know it, have not read it, strongly suggest picking this up.
You can watch it. You can watch it now.
You can watch it. The book, you can watch it. I would.
Yeah, the book is far better.
The book's far better. But as somebody who is a novice, who is very green on how to become well, this was the kind of the foundation for me to look in to myself, my past, and some of these sacred medicines that are used to do so. And so I read the book in a week. I was desperate. I knew that if I'd give myself a chance, to walk my daughter down the aisle, give my son a chance to learn how to throw a baseball with me. And so I wanted to give them this opportunity to have a father. And so I was willing to give it one last shot. And what I did is I started to search out people in the community that I could find mushrooms from. I had no clue. Yeah. I mean, I was straight lace fireman, dude. I was like, I left Wall Street.
Straight edge.
I left Wall Street for this shit. Right. I don't want to, dude. I do not want to get fired.
Right.
I'm in my mid 30s. Right. I'm in my upper 30s at this point. I don't want to start over. So I was very undercover. I was underground in who I talked to, who I trusted, and I found a gentleman through a friend out. I live in Bee Cave. Gentleman by the name of Jacob Boone. Jacob Boone killed himself this past January, and has really, really affected me, the loss of Jacob, because he was such a monumental catalyst in saving my life. Yeah. And I couldn't save his. And he gave me my first ounce of mushrooms. And I'd been doing research in a very short amount of time, what they were doing at Johns Hopkins University. And I got their playlist, and I bought a sleep mask, and I bought some really badass headphones, and I put it on, and I took 3.5 grams, my first ever dose of mushrooms, and I closed my eyes. Changed my life.
Yeah.
Changed my life. And those 5 to 6 hours that I was experiencing this medicine and experiencing myself was challenging. I was reliving flashbacks of my military time, pieces of my childhood that were damaged from my TBI were starting to reappear, not all pleasant. But I was able to see them through a different lens, and I was able to feel them, and I was able to feel scared, and I was able to feel fear and excitement and joy and all these feelings that up to this point I didn't have a relationship with anymore. And I didn't even know what living meant. I didn't know what love was. I didn't know what joy meant. I was going through my gray space. And so I came out and I started to cry. It was such an emotional release for me to be able to have these emotions and to feel again, because that's what I just wanted to feel.
Yeah.
It was so overwhelming. I remember crying, and it was the first time that I had cried in my conscious memory, because I was always told not to cry as a child. So we're taught and programmed very young to suppress. And it piqued my curiosity. I was really fucking curious.
Yeah.
And I journaled about it. I wrote pages about what I was feeling. And I started to work with mushrooms twice a month. And I started to stair step up the dosing to see what I could learn about myself, about my past, about my lineage, about this medicine, what I'm doing here. Mm-hmm. And I remember just feeling super connected with everything and having this, because I was an atheist. This is something that I want to mention. When I came back home from Fallujah, I was a strong atheist.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the Catholic Church.
Same.
And I was like, God does not fucking exist. There's no way in hell that God exists, because where we went,
yeah. After seeing
there's no God,
and
I was convinced.
Yeah.
I was convinced that there was no God. And I remember working through these initial journeys with mushrooms. Completely, I had a spiritual rebirth, and it was so beautiful to realize what we're doing here and what we're a part of, and answer questions that you used to question as a child, as an adolescent, as a young adult, and to really know with firm belief that there is a God.
Yeah.
And there is a great spirit. And so as I was doing this work on myself, people were very curious about who this person was that was showing back up at the fire station. I mean, Tim, I was different.
Yeah, yeah.
I was off all my medications. My drinking had almost completely stopped. Mm-hmm. I had the best relationship with my kids that I could have ever dreamed of having. I had a developing new relationship with their mom, my ex-wife, which was as good as I could imagine having. And it was the love for myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
My self-love and gratitude, that was probably the biggest kicker for me to notice a change.
Yeah. Let's go back to the relationship with your ex-wife, right?
Yes.
So I'm curious to know, was a lot of the alcoholism that she was experiencing due to the circumstances of the environment where all the negativeness was just compounding? And did your change of circumstance have an influence on her life, or was she in her own path, or did it stay the same?
That's a great question. I definitely had things to do with her self-medicating. 100%. I didn't know it at the time. Can't see. You really can't see when you're in a tailspin. Both of us were struggling with different issues. Her father died in a car accident when she was young. Never healed from that. We were co-creating a very difficult relationship. When we divorced, or when we were going through our divorce, she did have a moment to where she needed to seek treatment, and did go into rehab and is sober. And I'm proud to say she's almost 3 years sober, and I'm so grateful for that. She had to find it on her own. That she wasn't going to take advice from me.
Sure.
But I'm really grateful for her, for me, for our family unit, even though it looks a little bit different now. I'm so grateful that my kids have their mother in their life. Mm-hmm. showing up this way.
Yeah.
And, I wouldn't rewrite that chapter. As painful as that chapter was for me, cost a lot of money. When you have kids involved and when you have two people that can't see the love that they had once had for each other, the system can play that card. And, but I wouldn't change it because I learned a lot about myself in that process. I believe that she did too. So, doing shared birthdays now is absolutely epic.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, we're not spending weekends together, but I will say for the sake of our children, for them to see their parents be able to co-create in a container to spend time with them is a gift in itself.
Yeah, 100%. I've experienced a very similar circumstances myself, and I've been quite blessed with the way that we were. My ex-wife and I were able to focus on, regardless of what our relationship is and, how we don't see eye to eye, the most important thing is that our children are not the byproduct of that, and then there's no fallout that hits them, right? And, I've been lucky enough to where, when I moved from Chicago to San Antonio, my ex-wife moved and she lives a mile away from me.
Beautiful.
Right? And I get that opportunity to see my kids more frequently than most. And that does not fall lightly on me, right? Understanding that, but also understanding that, that's the responsible thing, right? Is that hard right is, and that's part of this healing journey is once you are in the position that you can put yourself in the back seat and put others in front of you that are more important. I mean, it's an easier pill to swallow when that ego has been, put down and knows its place. When it's running rampant and, has free design and free will over your life.
That's right.
That's when things become extraordinarily dangerous.
And having that awareness is how we break generational traumas.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something I think is important to talk about, right? You talk about some of the experience that you've had with the medicine, right? And there's so many notes I've been jotting down through the entire story, and thank you so much for sharing that. I think is it definitely puts into perspective the journey, right? And everybody has a journey, and as you're self-reflecting as you're listening to this story that's being told. Where are you on your path? What are you doing to expand your aperture and to look broader at the ideas of human growth, personal growth, and how are you showing up for other people? How are you showing up to a circumstance? Are you distracted and not giving 100%, or are you 110% in the moment? These are all the things that matter. And as that trauma, we go back to that conversation of trauma, especially within the military community, we like to think that a lot of the trauma has been, really happens at that military side, but that's not the case at all, right? We're bringing that luggage to the military, and, a lot of it is suppressed, right? Because if we think about the military over the last 40 years, right? You and I are of the same generation, right? I joined the Marine Corps in 1997. You're probably in that same time period. I come from Midwest America, a broken home, a lot of socioeconomic pressure that was being put on a single mother raising 3 children, and it wasn't a pretty sight. And there was a lot of things that happened in between there that have probably shaped my lack of emotion
right.
as an adult individual. But as we think about these. Of these moments and how they're impacting your life and how we're bringing that with us to almost every circumstance unresolved, right? It has shaped your opinion. It has shaped your perspectives. It shapes how you show up because you're going to be guarded. You're going to be reserved, and you're going to have these inexplainable things that as those environmental impacts that you've grown up with, and you're taking them with you. when you get to the military, for example, right, and you're having more stress put onto you, it is spinning you out of control, and then you're looking for escapism, and escapism leads to alcoholism. Alcoholism leads to bigger exposures on your inability to have open communication and networking and personal relationships, and then more isolation is happening, and bigger downward spirals are happening. You get out of the military, you readjust to the civilian life. You can't. You're spinning further down. Now you're going into drugs because you couldn't do drugs in the military, but you can now. And now you're doing marijuana. You're doing all these things, and not to say that those are bad things, but uncontrolled and not used for the right things, it becomes a problem in your life. Then you're in this free fall, and the next thing you know, you're putting a gun in your mouth. You're taking your life.
That's right.
In some way, shape, or form, right? And that is the story, right? And it's not a story of the military person. It's not the story of a first responder. It's a story of what we are existing.
Everybody.
What we are living with in today's America.
That's right.
Right. And we see it every day. And I think I talk about this a lot. Is COVID ripped the mask off of how we look at mental health within this country.
Yep.
I cannot go anywhere without seeing people breaking down. We're seeing it in social media across the spectrum. The crazy things that are happening on flights. People just losing their mind on the smallest of details that normally we would just roll off our shoulders. But it's having impacts on people because of all the stress that is happening and the unrelated or addressed traumas, right?
That's right.
Yada yada yada. So I mean, that's where we find ourselves, right?
That's right.
But
I mean, I saw a stat yesterday that came out: 122 people a day die from suicide.
Yes, I mean, yes, yeah,
122.
and that's just what is reported,
That's correct.
right? And and what is the thing that we'd like to do most within this country, right? There's a big looming gorilla in the room, right? You're feeling down, right? I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to talk to my doctor about my depressed feelings, yada yada yada, right? And then my doctor's going to sit there. And I'm going to go 3 or 4 times before they say, hey, here's what I think that you're suffering from, and here's a couple scripts for you, right? Do you got to take these pills once a day? Blah 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 blah, and And we're going to talk these things out over the course of X period of time, right? But when you're getting the Paxils, when you're getting the Zoloft, when you're getting the Trazodones, and you're getting all these mixtures of cocktails, which we call a zombie dope, right? That we don't know how they all work together, right? But we know as singular uses they have impact. But let's spread these SSRIs and tranquilizers and all these other things together, and just put them and say, hey, this is the solution. And this is the best case solution that we have as a society.
That's
right.
That's right.
There's a stat that I just read the other day. 61% of people that are using Trazodone have a 61% higher chance of killing themselves while on that medicine in comparison to Ambien, which is it's comparable drug, right? But we're not issuing Ambien in large doses to the veteran community. We're not issuing, we're issuing Trazodone. Why is that? Well, we could continue to play the line of deny until you die, right?
That's
from
right.
the VA, and all these other things, or we could say, what, let's try something different. Let's break ourselves from these pharmaceuticals and these poison pills, frankly, that are just wrecking our communities, wrecking our brains, disassociating ourselves from the rest of reality. And keeping us in a state of emotionless living, right?
Right.
And keeping us in the gray,
Right.
Because that's all that medicine really
Right.
does, right?
That's right.
And then to your point, then there comes psilocybin, then there comes these spiritual plants that have the ability, in often one dose, to treat resistant depression,
Right.
like name one from the book, right? In one dose, right?
Right.
From psilocybin, doing 6 grams in over a regulated environment, to ayahuasca,
Right.
or ibogaine, right? Ibogaine having 87% efficacy in first dose on breaking
right.
addictions.
And this is a really good. The Western medical model, they've labeled all of these feelings, right? All of these symptoms into depression, anxiety, PTS, et cetera, et cetera. And unfortunately, since these sacred medicines have been found on the Schedule I list with the Controlled Substance Act of 1970, thanks Nixon.
Yeah. The war on drugs.
Yeah, which we lost. They've now, to get out of that, they have to show all of this research to treat all of these different illnesses.
Yeah.
Right? With high levels of efficacy to even get off. Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And, what is depression? What is anxiety? What is PTS? Right? Those are labels that we all created.
Mm-hmm.
Right? These are all symptoms. These are feelings of us being further away from our true self.
Correct.
Right? And what's great about these medicines is they allow us to go back and to, a lot of times, see these experiences again, relive them again, but with a different lens, and to start to build a healthy relationship with those events, with those emotions, so that we can integrate them back into our life, that we can transcend, so that these events subconsciously don't hijack our fucking nervous system.
Right. Right. And then autoimmune issues start
Right.
wrecking your body.
So it's like, let's just not take a pill to treat the symptom. Let's explore why on earth I have this feeling that they want to label as anxiety in the first place. Yeah. Right? Let's get down to where does this come from? Yeah. And that's what these medicines are great. They're phenomenal, guys. Yeah. They're phenomenal. They will go in there and they will carve out in your psyche, in your subconscious, and find out. I mean, I pointed on this earlier. I worked with Iboga this year. A memory of me being molested as a 5-year-old, and I've done over 100 journeys, heroic doses of mushrooms up to this point. I've worked with Ibogaine, I've worked with 5-MeO DMT, I've worked with Wachuma, and it was Iboga this year that showed me a memory of when I was 5 years old, when I was molested by my sitter. It took me this long to have that memory shown to me. The medicine gave me that.
Yeah.
And it waited, and I'm not trying to get woo with anybody, but I believe that the spirit of that medicine waited until I had the proper support system. Yeah. I had the proper tools in my toolbox. I had the proper foundation to be able to unpack that.
Yes, 100%. I am of the mind that these spiritual plants do not give you what you want. It gives you what you need. And it is so calculated in the way that it does it. My work with ayahuasca and meeting of the Sacred Mother, and in my visions, and it happens to everybody. This is beyond anecdotal, right? This is real life stuff where everybody is saying, yes, I have met her in some way. I've heard her voice, and she has shown herself to me.
That's right.
And I have seen visions. And you can't deny this stuff, right? To me, having that ability to look inward in a way that is able to rip apart all of the fabrics of what we put in this construct and say, I'm going to look at my true self. I'm going to have a relationship with my true self. And this is the medicine that's going to provide me that path. As scary as it's going to be, I need to get on that road, right? Because what I learned from my journeys in ayahuasca is that I had built a significant armor around myself. And it was an armor to survive this world after I came back from combat. But it wasn't from combat. right? It was from all the other shit in my life that I had to guard myself from, right? And those were constructs that I put on myself. Had I just processed that, or had I known how to process those things after the fact, I probably wouldn't have had the need to build that armor. But I didn't, because we're not equipped to.
But you might not be
stuff.
sitting in this seat right now.
Life would be completely different.
So,
right? This is the path I'm supposed to be
we
on.
have to have a lot of gratitude for the suck.
That's it.
Right? Because that's the biggest thing about my life now and the work that I'm doing with Heroic Path to Light is the fact that I can relate.
Yeah.
The gift of being able to relate to somebody who's coming to me in a period of darkness. My doctor at the VA didn't know.
Yeah.
They never even saw they didn't even enlist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So being able to meet somebody where they're at, and be able to hold space for them.
Yeah. That's it.
And relate to their challenges because you've lived it.
Yeah.
And you come out on the other side. That is the beauty of this work. And so I'm grateful as you are for our subconscious and those bad habits that we had.
Yeah. I'm going to share something with you that I think that will highlight this conversation, right? My last experience with ayahuasca, I was sitting with a group of veterans that it was an incredible group. And the first night, my intention was to go along with everybody on this journey, right? The first night was a Friday night. And halfway through my journey, it was shown to me that my weekend was not, my purpose that weekend was not there to experience medicine. My purpose that weekend was to hold space for everybody in the room. I didn't know what that meant, but the voice and the visions that were being shown to me said, this is your purpose, and it's going to start time now. And at that point, like my mind returned back to reality. The effects of the medicine had completely gone away, and we're only not even halfway through the journey. And the entire room is starting to get extraordinarily restless. And the last thing that was said to me was, hold space for your friends. And I did that for the remainder of the evening and through the rest of the weekend. And that was what I was supposed to do. And that's what the medicine showed me to do, right? It was to be there for others. And I don't think I would have ever been able to do that had I never had that touch of the medicine, to understand the value of holding space for somebody else, because my narcissistic ego would never allow that to happen prior to me being with that medicine. Because let's be honest, I didn't care. I don't care what other people are struggling with. I have my own fucking problems. I'm not going to give a shit. But now I understand, right, in a much broader perspective that we are all struggling. And the path to enlightenment, the path to a greater self, is being and holding space for others and being a value add to another person's life, regardless if you know them or not.
That's right.
And and the other aspect that I learned from this medicine is and you touched about it you touched about it when your conversation about Fallujah, was this idea of atheism, right? I was very much the same way. I grew up a Southside Chicago Catholic, right? Did the whole altar boy stuff, all of it, right? The catechism, blah, 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 blah. But what I experienced in Iraq was so violent, so brutal, and what my mind was not prepared to really understand. And that changed my perspective on theology, on my belief structure, and it rocked me. And that was what probably pushed me into a place of making moral decisions, in my private life after the military that spun me out of control. But what I had got from this medicine was, I understand what God is, right? I understand the concept of God. I understand that God is love, and if you can live your life loving others and putting yourself in a constant space of this energy that you're pushing out, that is the highest form of reality.
Sounds like heaven to me.
Right? And, and this, and to anybody that's listening, that shit sounds like woo-woo shit, right? But I'm telling you, like from a guy that was a drinker, a philanderer, a smoker, living the life of, what I thought was, fun and excitement and, fast rush all the time.
But just straight up toxic.
It was straight fucking garbage,
Yep,
right? I was
right.
ruining more people's lives
That's
than I
right.
was having any effect on,
That's right.
right? And for me, like I live with a lot of regret from that because I have a I have a role in in the business that I am a part of. I have a role within the community that regardless of how I feel, people look to the things that I'm involved in, and I have a responsibility to that, right? And to go out there and treat it so carelessly, like, man, that's the medicine put me in the right space.
Thank you for sharing that. I would say not to have regret,
Yeah.
right? Because we don't know.
Right.
We don't know that our life is sacred. We don't really have that awareness, and we're stuck in this loop.
Yeah.
And so our subconscious is fucking kicked into overdrive. It's just keeping us fucking alive, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's-
And you're right, not to have regret. I think I've learned to forgive myself.
Yeah,
of
for
all
sure.
those things, right? And
That's good.
Again, the medicine without the medicine, I would never have been able to be in a place where I even acknowledge that.
That's right.
Right. Again, like we live on this planet. We live on this thing. Right?
I know,
That's
this
hurtling
floating
through
rock.
the cosmos.
Right.
And you get one time. One
Yeah.
time. And I wanna understand it.
There's been, I've had a lot of realizations that have come to me during this path I'm on. And I'll be on this path for the rest of my life here. And I'll continue to be integrating, because integration is a lifelong process.
Yes.
But, I can't change my past. It's just part of my story.
Yeah.
Right. And that, I'm not handcuffed to those events anymore. It's part of my story. It's not who I am.
Yeah.
I'm not a Marine. I'm not a firefighter. I'm a human being just like you. And we're doing the best that we fucking can. I'll tell you that. And I have the awareness now to be in this moment that we're sharing here. And they call it the present because it's a gift.
Yeah.
I mean, we're always looking in the past, or we're too focused on the future. Trust me, my visionary brain is out there in the future too, as I'm sure yours is. But man, like the only thing that we have control over is here and now.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that fucking matters.
Yeah.
We as a society, as a world, we're human doers. And it feels really nice just to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And, these molecules, these ancient medicines that have been used forever, really forever,
Yeah.
are being reintroduced now to our culture here in America. And, people are starting to really look into exploring the self, getting back to wholeness. Because once you get back to wholeness, you don't have depression, anxiety, PTS anymore, right? These are little indentions in our aura,
Yeah.
right? And then these medicines allow you to go in there, have these relationships with these challenging events, and bloop, pop out that little indention,
Yeah.
right? And become whole again. And I'll tell you what, when you and I speak for myself, but when you get to a place to where you have love in your heart, I never thought that I'd have love in my heart for my ex-wife again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I do. Right? This is a woman who birthed two little mini-me's.
Yeah. Right.
Right? And so when you have love in your heart, you attract, like a magnet, other people that have love in their heart.
Yeah.
And you're very sensitive to different types of energies, different people that don't have love in their heart. And you realize now that you don't want them close to you,
Yeah.
right? Not saying they have to be, banished forever, but they definitely need to do some work and come back. So where the present moment for me, Like tomorrow, I could absolutely die driving home back to my family today. Right? That is a possibility.
Right.
And so if I'm going to take time away from my wife and my children who I want to be present with, I want to be spending it with some freaking high vibrational, badass people
Right.
that want to champion me while I champion them.
Right.
Let's all fucking kick ass together. I don't have time for drama. I don't have time for the bullshit.
Yeah.
I am living my best life. And if you're listening to this, whoever it was on my fucking fire crew, on engine or ladder 1, who unloaded that weapon, I owe you my life. My children owe you this as well, because they have an opportunity to spend a lifetime with me. It's like, dude, what a badass motherfucker that's walking around knowing that he freaking saved my life.
Yeah.
And will not even let me know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how many times does this happen? You know, there's people that are listening to this show right now that are on the fence.
Yep.
And I just want to be very clear that my story is very similar to a lot of stories out there, right? But most people are successful at killing themselves. There's a lot of people that are debating if they are at the end of the rope. I want to let you guys know that there are options for you here in this country to get into a community, to be a part of something bigger than yourself, and to help get back to who you truly are. And it's with the work of some medicines that have been deemed by the federal government to be bad for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just want everybody to give yourself the time and the space to explore seeking work with these types of medicines to give yourself a second chance at life again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Let's talk a little bit about the molecules. Right?
Yep. Let's do it.
5-MeO DMT, Bufo.
My
What are your
all
thoughts.
my all-time, can I have a favorite? It's the most profound experience I've ever had in my life. It was, I had done a lot of work with mushrooms before I sat with 5-MeO DMT from the Bufo alvarius toad. It's a secretion from the glands on their back. Really fascinating. Mm-hmm. That this toad lives mostly underground, right? By accident, right? But my thoughts are somebody ate it,
yeah.
right? Out of survival, right? And had this transcendent experience. Yeah, it's they call it the God molecule. It's revered as such. And I had done a lot of work up to this point. I truly, I say this, like these are sacred medicines, right? These aren't medicines to just be, puffing on a vape pen, walking down the street, right? These need to be revered. You need to have intentions. There's a lot of education that goes about it, harm reduction practices, so forth. So just want to be crystal clear on this. This is not one to be taken lightly. It is what we as humans know as the strongest psychedelic compound that we've been able to find. And I'm sure there's a ton of other stuff out there that we don't know yet. But right now, it's been known as the strongest psychedelic compound. It lasts for about 20 minutes. The way that it was served to me, and the way that we serve it, it's vaporized. The secretion is dried, and then it's weighed out, and then it's vaporized. And whereas some of these other medicines have this period of time for the come up, it's there is
Punch you in the face.
It's instant. It's instant. It's absolutely instant. And for me, I can only speak of my experience. For me, it was complete ego dissolution. Mm-hmm. Like Justin didn't exist anymore. And where I went was the most beautiful place that I've ever seen, I've ever experienced. And it brought some sadness when I returned. And it was very interesting for me because I thought I died. Mm-hmm. I became a single source of light with everything. I really understood the beautiful symphony of God. And when I started to come out of that experience, I started to feel my fingers again, and I could feel the top of my mouth, and I could blink my eyes open, but I couldn't remember who I was yet. And I was kind of struggling with my name, and I was like, I'm Justin.
Yeah.
And then I came back into this ego of Justin, and emotional to say the least.
Sure.
Took me a long time to really unpack 5-MeO-DMT. This was a profound spiritual awakening for me, to have the understanding, which is my belief now, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience and not human beings having a spiritual experience. Mm-hmm. And that this is just a blip in eternity, a blip. And that we are part of something that is far greater than, getting the new Cybertruck.
Yeah. I mean, I like, there's parts of me that like believes that this is interdimensional shit, man. Like it is opening like dimensions and realities that we have no concept of.
Let's just say there's to keep it Barney style. Let's just say that us as humans don't know what the hell we're doing here, and there's a lot to be learned.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah.
So,
and we keep getting, interesting little tidbits dropped into, throughout the news, especially in the last couple of years, like UFOs, and now you got like.
I like where this is going to.
I know, yeah. Like you get Tucker Carlson out there saying, it's much bigger than UFOs. It's spiritual beings, and if we really knew what was going on, we'd be mortified. Blah 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 blah. Like, so what are we talking about here?
I know.
'Cause I might have already seen it.
I'm like, beam me up, Scotty.
Right.
And this is really good stuff. I know it's foreign to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I was there not that long ago, a little over 5 years ago. I was a disbeliever.
Yeah.
I'm a believer now. Yeah. And, these medicines, they all act differently. They all have different spirits to them. That you learn something different out of all of these. But nothing else that I've ever tried in my life has worked.
Yeah.
But, these medicines have allowed me to transcend these traumatic experiences in my life, to become my truest self.
Yeah. I've spoken to a lot. Bufo intrigues me the most, right? I've worked with psilocybin,
right.
I've worked with ayahuasca, I've worked with LSD. A lot of that was recreational in previous years. And just even thinking about the difference in recreational use for spiritual use, like the experiences are far different. I was, sadly, I was participating in my younger years.
Sure.
I used LSD a lot. It was probably 200 plus doses I've taken before the age of 16 years old. But the experiences I have with this medicine now.
Can we just pause there for a second?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
200 doses before 16.
Yeah. It was it was the 90s, man.
It was the 90s in Chicago.
Oh, this was in North Carolina.
Oh, North Carolina.
Yeah,
awesome. Awesome.
The LSD scene was a lot different
That's
in Raleigh. But it really, where I am today in using this or experiencing this medicine, it's much different. The outcomes are and the experiences are much different. But when it comes to like Bufo, I ask a lot of questions on it because my wife has experienced it. A lot of people within my immediate circle have experienced it, and they tell me about all these extraordinarily impactful things. But I'm like, but what? How much do you remember? And like, well, I really don't remember much, but the things I do are over the top. And then I think about my experiences with ayahuasca, which, that's a, 6 to 8 hours, depending, on the blend, right? But, that 6 to 8 hours, I mean, I can vividly remember every experience that I've had on that medicine, and the things that I'm being shown, I can clearly document and work on and through my integration later and in different periods. And that's why I'm like, Bufo, maybe Bufo is not for me in the journey that I'm on. But, because it sounds like, we talk about it a lot in the sense that like Bufo, maybe the Bufo is what you introduce to people that are like, that need a hit in the face, to get them out of a suicidal ideation or, to get them a quick exposure to the medicine and then put them on the path. But there's a lot in it. You are far closer to that medicine than the casual people that I know that are experiencing right now. So what are your thoughts in terms of, in the blend of medicines, where does Bufo fall in terms of its ability and not necessarily its power, but, the ability, you use psilocybin for, this type of experience, ibogaine for this type of experience or whatever.
The medicines that I've worked with, I'm speaking ibogaine and iboga and psilocybin have allowed me to go back and relive events of my past and to have an understanding of my father's trauma and how he grew up and understanding generational traumas, being able to unpack that stuff. 5-MeO-DMT Bufo allowed me the opportunity to truly feel source consciousness. And to go to a place to where we are source consciousness. This is all one consciousness that we are living, and we are all sharing into this reality. That was monumental for me to understand that we are just direct reflections of one another, that we're all doing this together, that we're all coming from the same place. We were made in God's vision. We're all God. I'll say this on this podcast. This is what this molecule showed to me, is that we are all from the same consciousness. And it was really, I wouldn't go and kill another person anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want my children to have to go kill anybody because we're just killing a reflection of ourselves.
Right.
It's pretty deep.
Yeah.
But I will say that Bufo, I do not recommend it as somebody's entry into this space. I think as healing as these medicines can be, they can also be scary.
Yeah.
They can be challenging. They can create trauma if not done properly, if not with the right education, with the right support system or foundation. So because of its strength and you don't, for me, I didn't have visions because Justin didn't exist.
You're with Source, right?
I'm with Source. So if Justin doesn't exist, I can't focus on my childhood.
Yeah.
But, each of these medicines have a gift associated with them and what you learn from them. From me, the gift was the gift of eternity, the gift of knowing.
Yeah.
Right. So where I didn't have faith anymore because faith was a lack of knowledge. And so for me, it was the knowing aspect that was truly monumental. And I needed the medicine gave me what I needed at that time to understand what it is that I'm doing here, what my purpose is.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I'm excited for you to sit with this medicine, and I look forward to having a conversation with you after that ceremony.
It's going to be an adventure. It's going to be an adventure. Now, talking about this shared consciousness, I think it's fascinating, right? I was in a good conversation with somebody the other day, and they shared this idea with me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way, right? Is that we're living in a dimension right now where there is 8 billion realities occurring simultaneously.
That's right.
Right, and every one of those realities has its own challenges and situations. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? I'm curious.
We're co-creating reality together across the globe on this hurling rock in the universe. I mean, I don't know what's, I mean, I'm cool with thoughts of what I believe are my beliefs now, but are we alone in the vast eternity? That's scary as shit if we are.
Right.
And then for a lot of people, if we're not alone, then that's scary as well.
Right.
I believe that there's people having the same conversation somewhere else.
Sure.
Right. And I believe that they're, us as a species. I also don't believe that this is the first time that humans have roamed this planet.
Sure.
I think we've been absolutely close to extinction. Maybe a small group of humans were left and then started to spread out again. I mean, they're finding toys in remnants of ruins that sure does look like the goddamn Space Shuttle Challenger.
Sure.
Right? Which opens up more conversations on like, well, did the Egyptians build the pyramids, or were the pyramids here for the Egyptians to inhabit?
Yeah, right.
And so let's just, for as old as the world is that we know, I think a lot of things have happened that we're looking at a few thousand years out of a few billion.
Right.
We're sharing in this consciousness. We're sharing in this reality, and we're all doing our part. Me driving down here and having this conversation with you is building that reality.
Yeah. It's extending the fabric.
It's extending the fabric. So I mean, these types of conversations deserve their own show.
It's fascinating stuff.
But I want to say about using these medicines to explore the self allowed me to have the open mind to even have these types of conversations. Yeah. I mean, I was shut down, dude. I mean, growing up in the Catholic Church, there was no way in hell I could have these conversations at my house.
Yeah.
Everyone's indoctrinated.
It is. It has been a struggle that I've had to overcome on my medicinal journey. So it's because there's some old heads, man. The old heads that don't want to break themselves from that thinking. So, but those are definitely challenges. I was called a colonizer not too long ago by I was in a psychedelic conference in Kansas City, and sharing some of my ideas, and this guy gets up like, "You're a colonizer. The medicine hasn't shown you anything," espousing your military ideas. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, get this guy out of here.
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know. But this is certainly warrior's medicine, right? You're going to walk into this medicine and learn something, and it could be gentle, it could be rough, depending on what it is the medicine is going to give you. This is certainly, again, this is not recreational stuff. This is intentional, focused work that takes a great deal of focus because the experiences you're going to have. And more importantly, the processing that you do following the medicine is only a bridge. The integration is the most important part. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on and what you guys do at Heroic Path of Light for integration.
For sure. the psychedelic experience, the entheogenic compound, the sacred medicine is just a catalyst.
Yeah.
It's a great pattern disruptor. It's a great reset, creates neuroplasticity in the brain, allows us to really have the space to get out of that trauma loop and to learn new habits and to explore ourself and to get back to, for me, that little boy inside, right? And so the prep and the integration is the work. And it's going to take work. It's a practice. They call it a practice for a reason, because you have to practice at it, right? This isn't, this is, unfortunately, watching what's happening on the state and the federal level, with getting these medicines off the schedule. This isn't like going to your doctor and you take the pill and all your problems go away. It's not a panacea. I promise you guys, it's not going to happen. But if you properly prepare for that experience, and I say that because for me, the most medicinal component of this is the community. Being able to show up and go through this experience for our organization, it's a total of 10 people. To go through that together, through this entire program, to have this significant emotional event, i.e. the ceremony, the psychedelic experience, and to be able to have that shared experience, that bond, that trust, and then to carry that into your daily life together, that is the medicine.
Yeah.
But for us to get out of our bad habits and to sever that loop, it takes a catalyst. And for me, it was mushrooms. And, we're a multi-sacrament sanctuary. We serve sacred medicines within our sanctuary. And I was realizing of friends of mine that were leaving the country that they were going to, nice retreat centers, indigenous retreat centers, working with different shamans and medicine men and women in foreign countries. And they were coming back and they didn't have any support.
Yeah.
And they didn't have any framework. And these medicines can stir up a lot of emotions and memories. And I was starting to see people say, man, I need to go do the medicine again. And I'm talking about a couple months, right? So I come back from Maya, that honeymoon phase ends, that golden period. Yeah. And it's like, I need to go sit with the medicine again. I'm like, wait, what?
Right.
So it allowed me the understanding that we really need to build out a program. And, I was treated with Ibogaine. I love the individual that helped facilitate that journey for me. But the container was compromised, and I had one prep call and I had one integration call, and a lot of stuff came up for me, and the container itself wasn't sacred. And so I'm grateful for that experience, because I needed to see how not to do it.
Yeah.
And after that is when I left the fire service last year in February of 2022, after 5 years, and I incorporated this sanctuary, Heroic Path to Light. And it took me 9 months to create our first protocol. And of course, I was going to go back to the medicine that I had the most experience with at that time, and that was mushrooms. And we built out a protocol for mushrooms and 5-MeO-DMT from the Bufo alvarius toad. And that was going to be spanned across 5 days. And I was looking at some of these other retreats were like, show up on a Friday, leave on a Sunday, really tossing a lot of medicine inside of that container. And there wasn't a lot of room for integration. Mm-hmm. And so what we're doing now is I built out a therapeutic model to properly support not only the individual, but the families during this entire 25-week program. And I had to cap it off at some point, right? I wish I could work with somebody for a year before they even work with psychedelics, get them through some breath work, get them through some different workshops. But I found, 8 weeks is what I've honed in on as really monumental timing to properly prepare somebody for the ceremony. And during this time, we have RNs on staff, we have a medical director, we have a psychologist, we have trauma therapist, and we have an integration team. And these individuals help the person, the participant, the member of our sanctuary that's coming through, taper off medications, and then learn different tools in one-on-one and group calls over 8 weeks, how to properly prepare and regulate the nervous system for the ceremony. And during this period of 8 weeks, the families, the spouses, the partners, the girlfriends, the boyfriends, the friends, they get a 4-week cohort to help prepare them to learn how to properly support their loved one, the person that they care about. And then everyone comes into town. We have a place out in Dripping Springs. And they spend 5 days with us. Now, as we onboard different medicines, we've onboarded, of course, mushrooms, bufo, and wachuma. And then 2024, we're going to be onboarding ayahuasca and ibogaine. And so some of these, the two latter compounds that I speak of will have longer retreats. Yeah. But for these retreats, they're 5 days. And so they spend 5 days with us. And we don't have to go into the retreat because I know your question's really on prep and integration, but the integration process is 16 weeks. And it never ends. Yeah. But, on paper, what I have to tell my board of directors and donors is it's 16 weeks. And it's a 16-week accountability group. And inside of that 16 weeks, they have another 8 weeks of calls. Again, with our therapist, with our integration team. And then they have a 5-week breathwork program that we put them through, that they get to go through together as a cohort. And then they have this entire 16-week integration program and accountability group to where they switch partners every 4 weeks. So they'll have 4 different partners. We're very strategic in who we partner people up with. Yeah. Most people wouldn't have talked to each other. I really like to get creative to show where there's, reflections of people in one another that are a little sticky. Yeah, yeah. So that they can grow and expand from this. And so they have different assignments. We have gratitude practices. We have mindfulness practices. They have to do video and voice check-ins on the phone daily. Because we don't know how somebody's doing when they're just texting. Yeah. So we want to see you. We want to hear from you. It could be a 30-second share. Just show us, let us know how you're doing, what's showing up for you presently. And this is a place for us to continue to be vulnerable and for us to be able to celebrate our highs, celebrate our lows, and really have a true understanding that we're not alone anymore. I think that was the biggest thing for me is I felt alone. Mm-hmm. Like everybody that I was surrounding myself with, people at the fire station, I truly didn't think anybody else was at the point that I was at. And I've realized that, dude, there's a lot of people that are just trying to fucking survive. Yeah. Like and they don't know how to get out. And so they're always having these ideas in the back of their head. Like, boom, alcohol's legal. Let's do that. Tobacco's legal. Boom, let's do that. Let's continue to suppress because they don't know another way, or they're scared to try it, or they're scared of the repercussions legally. And so
even harboring yourself in like food.
That's right. Sugar, anything. The biggest drug of all time. Right. And so, without, I say this to anybody listening or who's curious about, working with psychedelic medicines. The prep and integration is the gem. It is the community is the medicine. It really takes education and learning harm reduction practices and all these different tools. Like, I didn't know yoga. I didn't have gratitude. I didn't do mindfulness practices, but all of these different tools allow me to be present.
Yeah.
And that's what I needed. I needed the tool. I needed somebody to show me how to do it.
Yep.
And so without that type of prep and integration from the experience, all it is going to be an experience.
Yep.
And you're going to have these thoughts that come up that say, well, I need to go back and do the medicine. Yeah. We really need to integrate these experiences into our daily life to become whole again.
Yeah, 100%. I think about
that was my soapbox.
Hey, it's perfect. I think it makes me think back to my integration from my first experience with ayahuasca, and when I came back home, I think it's beautiful that you have the spouses and the significant others and friends, family, however that individual wants to bring that
right.
close network in for that 4-week program. It's essential. Because my wife didn't know who the hell I was. She's like,
That's
"What?
Right.
Who is this person that is now in the body of my husband that is not reflecting any of the characteristics of what he was just 5 days ago?"
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, because we do have I didn't mention that. We have that 4 week. It's an 8-week program. It's 4-week prep and 4-week integration for the families, because we call it Family Matters. But the family, we really need to heal the family unit.
Yes.
And to your point, it's like, well, dude, you just been poo-pooing on me for the last 20 years. Right? Like, who is this person?
Yeah.
And you're going back into the same environment that you just left a week prior.
Right.
And now this,
like you're coming in like Jesus.
Who is this? got your mala on, right?
Your wife's like,
right.
Who the fuck is this guy?
Right.
And, do you remember that argument that we didn't finish before you left?
Tell me a little bit. Do we have time to hit on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your reintegration back home.
It was
with your wife not having the support.
Yeah, it was very different. It was very hard for me, right? I key up on the word you could say vulnerable, right? I was feeling for the first time vulnerable, but in a different way. I didn't have anxiety of being vulnerable with my feelings, and I have a hard time, exhibiting emotion as just a natural characteristic of my own. So coming back into the house, into my family, that, we were still operating off of that old paradigm. I felt like a foreigner. In a foreign land, right? Mm-hmm. I knew that I had changed. I knew that I need to communicate that in the most effective way to my wife and my children, that I had changed. And I needed to do that in a way that made sense without them you just went psycho, right? And now you're more psycho than what you were before, but you're just, you're less. Right. You're less forward about it, right? You're doing it with a smile on your face, and I'm like, well, okay. So that was a hard period, and it took a couple months. My working through that with my wife, working through that with my children, working through that with my mother, and then all the other people that are outside of my immediate circle of hey, like all my friends were. It was a shock to all my friends. Like, who the fuck you don't drink anymore? That's all I know Tim to do is get sideways drunk and be the life of a party.
Right.
Tim, you don't smoke anymore? I'm not hanging out the smoke pit anymore with people. Like, what's going on with you? And so that was the hardest part of trying to share my changes with other people that were so entrenched with the character and the personality and the behaviors of previous Tim. And I've always said, the Tim that people remembered in my immediate circle died in the desert of Iraq.
Same.
Right. The person that came back was a monster.
Yep.
But that monster died on the hill in Oregon when I was touched by medicine.
Yep.
And who I am today is almost like my 17-year-old self that is in a better place mentally than I was at that time period. I have more experiences. I have more understanding of the world around me. Mm-hmm. I have more compassion,
Gratitude,
empathy.
Yep.
I have all these new things, but I feel energetic. I feel creative. I feel all those things that I had at that younger age that didn't get spoiled by all the traumas of life.
our soul is pure.
Yeah, and once I was able to understand and truly understand the idea that those things that I experienced do not serve me, and I'm able to leave them at the door
Yep.
and say goodbye. That was an instance in my life that changed everything, right? And that's how I was able to communicate to my family what was going on by saying, I sat with my friend Frank Hazelwood that died in 2012, and he was able to tell me, Tim, what you are doing is wrong, and what you are doing is you do not. I was living my life with this understanding that I had to be more than what I needed to be for the people that didn't make it home from Iraq.
That's right.
And I didn't need to do that. I was not responsible for those men's death. We all raised our hand, and we all knew what we were getting ourselves into. And that's what I needed to understand that. And that was what knocked the first domino down, and everything was able to fall to the wayside and create a new space for me, a new opportunity that I can look through life in a different way and say, you know what, I'm good with me. I'm okay with who I am. I don't need to build this facade. I don't need to show up differently. I don't need to please other people. If I can be happy with myself and love myself, then I can start expressing love towards other people. And that's where Tim from 2004 to 2020 was not able to do. He was not able to love himself. So how was I able to love other people?
You don't.
Right? And I was fortunate during that time period that I met my current wife that was able to pull me off the ground and keep me from making disastrous decisions. And I think the medicine has brought us closer because I brought her to the medicine.
Awesome.
And she was able to go through things that she's needed to process. And now we're on this path together.
It's beautiful.
Right? And our children are seeing the responses of that, right?
It's beautiful.
I've washed all the shit away from my life that I don't need anymore. And I find myself hanging out with my wife and children. That's all I need.
I know. Isn't that
right?
What a gift.
That is the greatest gift I've ever had.
Yep.
Right? I don't need to do all this other stuff.
That's right.
And when I find myself when I'm at a hotel, in nowhere America, because I'm on a work trip, that I find myself missing my family.
That's right.
Right. Whereas before it was like, oh, I'm going to go hang out at the bar.
That's right.
I'm going to go find something to get myself into. Right. And all that is a distant memory. It's
right.
all in the rear view. And I would never have had those experiences if I didn't walk into this with an open eye.
Yep.
And a perspective of saying, Tim, you need some fucking help, bro. And you've tried everything and nobody can provide it to you because you are the problem.
I'm a guide for people that come through our program. I'm not a healer. I'm not a doctor. All the doctors that I've met with over my time didn't heal me.
Yeah.
We have a technology inside of us. We have a wisdom. We're our own healer. And these medicines are great at exposing that.
Yeah.
To where we have everything that we need inside of us. And restoking that fire to where that we want to achieve things again. We want to become a better man, a better woman, better father, a better friend. Like that is the wisdom teaching us that we have complete control over our life, over our reality, over our nervous system. We have the wisdom to wake up and have a smile on our face. Yeah. We can choose to suffer or we can choose to move through it. I mean, it's fascinating. This is a fascinating conversation and something that I've devoted the rest of my life to sharing with others. So as you as well.
Yeah.
So,
I think I'm sure you're familiar with this, but the prophecy of the seventh generation of Sitting Bull and the Red Road, right? we're on that path.
That's
we
right.
are currently living in the 7th generation.
That's right.
And we are all looking for healing, and we're all going back to the sacred medicines to find it.
That's right.
And that is a beautiful place.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can all get ourselves on that little boat, maybe we can reduce conflict, and we can,
That's right.
Start putting our attention onto the things that are important. Of like, I don't know, being there for our community. Stop with the violence and being more compassionate to the individuals that are on the side of the street and have nothing. And we've done a great job in our country of thanking everybody for their service as we step over them, homeless on the side of the street.
That's right.
That is no place that I want to live, and that's
right.
not a reality that I want to be a part of. And I think we all can do something better.
Amen.
So, but that's what you're doing. Heroic Path to Light.
Yep, Heroic Path to Light. That's what we're doing now. And so we just finished. We just did a full year of retreats. We were able to sponsor 53 veterans, first responders, frontline workers to come through this program. So have a lot of gratitude for my team, for the community to help support these individuals to find this level of healing within the borders of our own country at almost zero cost.
Yeah.
So that that's what I've really wanted to help people with. Is I didn't want the cost to play a factor into if somebody I didn't want cost to be the factor of somebody not becoming well.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, it's off the table. I mean, I know as a fireman, I was bringing home $2,400 a month. There's no way in hell that I could have left the country or stayed in the country to work with these medicines. So I had to do it by myself.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that for those that can't afford, that don't have the means, that it's our country's turn to say thank you and to serve you.
Yeah, 100%. And there's some interesting things that potentially coming down the pipeline that we can facilitate those.
Yes, absolutely.
So Justin, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I want to bring you back and expand this conversation even further because I think there is a whole segment that we could talk about when it comes to first responders and how this medicine within that community can be of such an incredible impact.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
And there's a lot more work that needs to be done in that regard as well. So we have you'll be seeing a lot more of Mr. Justin Lapree from here at Grunt Style and American Grit. But in the meantime, where can people go if they are interested in learning more about you, more about your program, and how to get involved?
Absolutely. So we're on all the social media platforms. Yes, even TikTok. Thanks, Ethan, for setting that up. LinkedIn, you can go and find me personally. If you have LinkedIn, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook. We have YouTube. But if you just want to go to our website, www.heroicpathtolight.org. This will be in the show notes. If you or somebody in your community or loved one is in need of support, of community, of healing, please do apply. If there is a section on there to apply for a foundational healing grant, if you need financial assistance to come through this program, please do apply. Please do come see us here in Austin. If you just want to learn more, please reach out. Myself, I am, although the founder and the president of the organization, my phone's on 24/7. So I'm here with you guys every step of the way up this mountain. So we're going to do this together. It's a great honor for me to be able, like you said, to be able to hold space and to be a beacon of hope for those that are in the darkness.
Yes,
so
absolutely. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
I appreciate it, Tim. Thank you, man.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of American Grit as we continue to expand your mind on mental health and psychedelics. Like always, wash those hands, be kind to one another, and we'll see you next time.